ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive. Brought to you by Huntington Federal Savings Bank. Local then, local now. Member FDIC.
It is Tuesday, November 10th. Your drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. You can join the program by calling the Miller Lite phone lines at 877-420-TALK. That is 877-420-8255. Miller Lite, hold true, great taste, only 96 calories. It is the original light beer. Coming up today on the program, we're going to hear from Chip Walters, longtime play-by-play voice of Middle Tennessee. We're going to hear from him, get his thoughts on the upcoming game. Also, later on, usually when we have Chris Dickerson on, it's to talk about something maybe J-School related or something journalistic from a story standpoint. This time, Chris is waiving all rights to being a journalist here, and he's just a parent because right now there's a lawsuit going on, and they're trying to, in Putnam County, figure out why they're not being afforded the opportunity to play in the state volleyball tournament. Several schools impacted by this. I've just been following this on a surface level, so Chris is going to get me caught up on everything going on because right now, I believe it's being heard right now. So we're going to talk to him a little bit later on the program, kind of get the details on this. But all three Putnam teams have filed a lawsuit, and the hearing is going on right now, so hopefully we'll have some information a little bit later on about this, and Chris will definitely tell us what the deal is. But just to qualify that, he is a parent when we talk to him about this, but he'll give us the information on what the lawsuit is, what the objectives are as far as the volleyball teams in Putnam County and the WVSSAC. So that's what's coming up a little bit later on. So we've got that. Also, I promised you before we go to break, we're going to hear from Asher O'Hare, the quarterback for Middle Tennessee. Later on, we'll hear from your reigning Offensive Player of the Week in Conference USA, Grant Wells. So we've got a jam-packed show today. Let's start with what's happening in Conference USA today. Some bad news, sad news. I don't know how to describe this because it's just terrible what has continued to happen because, unfortunately, the pandemic has gotten out of control in some regards, and it continues to linger on, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. But unfortunately, many Charlotte 49ers athletic employees are going to be required to take 10 days of unpaid leave between now and June, and that's because of the impact that COVID-19 has had on the program. The furlough will apply to all employees making $50,000 or more annually and will include football coach Will Healy and men's basketball coach Ron Sanchez. Employees have until June 30th to complete furloughs, all allowing for seasonal flexibility. So, unpaid. The worst news could be it could be permanent, but on furlough, you basically you're not coming into work and you're not getting paid. So, I mean, again, tough to get that news, especially this time of year. And you hope that it's not going to be that bad of a hit for a lot of these employees. But still, that's a good chunk of your income. That's definitely a hit there. Some people, and I relate, you're living paycheck to paycheck. So, again, that's where you look at some of the stuff and you see it happening and you totally hate it for them. Now, this isn't as bad of news. This is actually okay. UTEP has a game coming up against UAB. It's been moved up one day to Friday, November 20th. It's going to be played in Midland, Texas, Grande Stadium. The game is set to kick off at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Central Time. And it's going to be played with no fans in attendance. The contest is going to be streamed live on ESPN+. And this is how they're doing this, only coaches, student athletes, support staff, officials, medical personnel, and media with a working function will be permitted into the stadium. Media is going to be asked to follow similar protocols as previous home games this season, and not going to be permitted on the field. It's getting to the point now where we're having to get to maybe neutral locations, bubble as best you can to get some of these games going. And I mentioned this next story because I don't know what's going to happen with Marshall just yet. The columnist for the Herald-Dispatch, Chuck Landon, illustrated in his piece about how West Virginia is going to allow about 20%. And so he did the exercise of seeing what maybe 20% will look like at the Cam Henderson Center for Marshall. And due to COVID-19, Duke University is going to begin its winter sports program seasons without spectators at home events. So that means basketball. No fans. Can you believe we're going to have a season where there won't be any Cameron crazies watching a Duke game? I mean, that's what made Duke basketball so special all those years. Not just the teams, not just what they were able to do on the basketball court, but the atmosphere. That's where we're getting, and this is real because there won't be any fans watching Duke basketball. This makes it a lot more real for all of us here. And so I'm not sure what we're going to see with Marshall just yet. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that many fans. If 20% is what it is, that's what it is. You're not going to be any contact with players. You're not going to be at the lower bowl area. I mean, I can't imagine. Will there be a certain line that you can't cross? Okay, you can come down, sit this far in the lower bowl, but no further. And I'm talking about the upper portion of the lower bowl. I mean, where are we going to put fans? How are we going to do this? And is there going to be a lottery system? Okay, you're a season ticket holder, you get to do this. I mean, that hasn't been determined yet, or it hasn't been released yet. And so we don't know yet. And I'm not putting money down on it. I'm not going to say it's a lock, but I'm still wondering how much, if any, of the non-conference schedule are we going to see with Marshall basketball. So that's where we're at now with everything that's happening today in Conference USA. But I wanted to throw that Duke story in because, again, Duke University, no fans will watch Duke basketball. Now, I promised yesterday, and we're going to get to it right now, I wanted to hear just a couple minutes of Asher O'Hara. He's the quarterback for Middle Tennessee. If you have been following the series over the last few years, you know Marshall players know who Asher O'Hara is. And just want to get his thoughts. He talked a little bit about the 75 game as well. He's aware of it, so it's not lost on the Middle Tennessee players when they come into Huntington on Saturday to play against the Thundering Herd. Here's Asher O'Hara, the quarterback for the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders.
Good morning, Asher.
Right.
So Coach kind of mentioned it there. This is the best statistical defense in the conference that you guys are going to be facing. What kind of concerns you most when you look at them on film that you guys are going to have to focus in on for Saturday?
As a defense, they just really are super disciplined, sound, and it seems like they got a lot of chemistry. They know what they're doing, and they really believe in each other. You could tell their camaraderie on film. You could just see how many people get to the ball and stuff like that. So we just got to, not really think about them as much. We just have to play a perfect game on offense, not have any turnovers, get the ball moving, win up front, get some leverage going, and we're going to be fine. We'll make plays, but just overall, they're a really sound defense.
Saturday is going to be a really emotional day with them, with it being the 50th anniversary of the plane crash. Coach kind of touched on that. For you guys, obviously, you mentioned it right there. How do you guys maybe keep your emotions in check and just focus on what you have to do?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's a big deal to them, so it's an honor to be able to represent those people that are lost in that time, and it's going to be a good game, and they're going to get a lot of extra energy from that. But at the end of the day, we just have to stay true to ourselves and believe in each other. We can't let anything outside really affect us and what's going on. We just have to take this game like it's any other game, the most important one of the week.
You guys obviously wanted to play on Saturday, but because of things you can't control, that didn't happen. Did you see that maybe as like okay, we get an extra week to rest, or maybe would it have been better for you guys to have played on Saturday to prepare for a team like Marshall?
Yeah, I think it could go both ways, but you might as well look at it the best way. And what we've done is just accept that it's a good week of rest, more time to get ready for a big game. We have a chance to go and play a ranked Marshall team at their place, so we're fresh for sure, and we're ready to go, and we're going to take it as a good thing that it happened.
Asher O'Hare, quarterback for Middle Tennessee. You're going to see a lot of him on Saturday. When we continue, we're going to hear from Chip Walters, the voice of Middle Tennessee football, when we continue on today's edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
Never miss a moment of The Drive with Paul Swann. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Coming up on Saturday, Marshall facing off against Middle Tennessee. And to tell us more, at least as much as he possibly can, about Middle Tennessee is the longtime voice of Middle Tennessee football. We've got Chip Walters joining us. And Chip, this has been a crazy season. You haven't had a game in a few weeks, so it's going to be a nice change of pace once again.
Yeah, it is. And, it's kind of interesting because – we haven't played in 2 weeks, and but the way the season started, after I think just about everybody lost most of their non-conference games, the Blue Raiders were able to cobble a schedule back together with 11 games that included 2 with Troy, and up until last week, I think Middle was one of only 20 schools that had played 7 games to that point. So, it just goes to show you that it is a week-by-week proposition. Here locally, obviously, the Alabama-LSU game, that was being postponed was a big deal, and we found out here within the last hour, I guess, that Tennessee and Texas A&M are going to be postponed. So it is these are definitely unique times for sure.
Well, the good news is we've got you a beautiful day dialed up for Saturday. We're looking forward to having you back here. This is probably, for me personally, this series in Western Kentucky, my 2 favorite that Marshall plays in football. I really enjoy this series because it goes back and forth. There's really not one dominant team that has won 4 or 5 straight. It's really a battle every time.
Well, it has been, but there have been, if you're on the middle side of things, it feels like, my gosh, when have we ever beaten those guys? But it was just, a couple of years ago, Middle got its first ever win in Huntington after, making a couple of playoff trips there back in the 90s. And then it has seemed like when Middle has gotten the wins, a lot of times it's been an overtime or a block kick or, something like that to salvage it. But it is a fun series. It's one, I think, with a ton of respect. I know Stock and Doc really like each other a lot and respect what each other does. And this team that Doc has right now, it's like, my gosh, this is the kind of team you dream of. You look up and down the depth chart and every offensive lineman is a redshirt senior and, they're gigantic, and you've got a young quarterback that they're protecting who's doing great things, and a bruising running back and a defense that's just stifling. These are the kind of teams that as a head coach you dream about. And everybody's trying to take a shot at this really, really good Marshall team this year.
I think you've come up with the name of either a sitcom or a podcast, Stock and Doc, Doc and Stock. I like it.
I know and I thought the same thing when it popped out of my mouth right there. But Coach Stockstill is like I mentioned, he's good friends with Doc, and he's equally as good friends with Brad Lambert. So tonight we do Coach Stock's radio show tonight, and so he's always quick to heap some praise on those guys. Yeah,
I was part of that Zoom call yesterday, and you could hear it, and you heard Doc as well if you listen in a little bit of his, mutual respect there. This is a big one, though. Doc likes to hang out with Stock when there's nothing on the line, but this one's going to be really tight on Saturday for sure.
Well, it is, and and for Middle, it's they've kind of gotten the ship straightened out a little bit, and once you do that, you were looking forward to a home game against Charlotte, a team that had got them pretty good a year ago, and now you've got to try to continue the good things you've been doing against the best defense that's been on your schedule so far. And for Marshall, I'm sure there's some self-imposed pressure of being, number 15 or number 16 in the country, depending on which poll you look at, and wanting to continue that in a year where you may not have as many opportunities to put together that, perfect or near perfect season. So you want to make the most of every outing you have. And so far they've been able to do that.
This is a different type of game coming up on Saturday. And listening into, and we heard Asher O'Hare just a few minutes ago before we came to you, and listening to Stock yesterday, they know when they come into Huntington, they come into this game on Saturday, this isn't just a normal game day. Marshall puts everything into this game. It is the most important game on the schedule. Doesn't matter the opponent. It's just the most important game on the schedule in honor of the 75 victims of the plane crash in 1970. How careful does Middle Tennessee have to be to not get caught up into all of that and just come in and play a football game?
Well, I mean, and I think that's what you have to do as a coach. But to your point, it is very appropriate that this is the most important game on Marshall's schedule each and every year, no matter the opponent, because they gave all. Those folks gave everything, and then as it rose from the ashes, it really enhances the spotlight on those 75 souls. But I think, just like in regular life right now, you try to block out the noise. There's plenty of it. And not that this is bad noise at all, but you have to, I think it's not that you don't play emotionally. I think you have to just focus on the football part of it. And, I'm sure every player on this team has, how many times have they, seen We Are Marshall, and how many have watched it this week, and that kind of thing. But it's, it's one of those things. I think you have to go about your business, and that's something that Middle is, and I compare Middle kind of with Charlotte about how they go about their business. Coach Stockstill is very, very even-keeled. His staff is very mature and even-keeled, and they go about their business that way, and they've had good success. 10 out of 14 years, they've been bowl eligible. And, Charlotte, on the other hand, they're all about the emotion. They're all about trying to gin up the energy and that kind of thing. So, I kind of think that, and you always hear the old phrase that, once you get hit in the mouth, it's just a football game. And there's a lot of truth to that, but it's still a big, big deal. And I think as Middle is concerned, they've just got to worry about how they've game planned for this. They've got to get scouting into the game, and they have to be able to get execution into the game, because Marshall provides a set of challenges that are not easy for Middle. Like Marshall's run defense is outstanding. Middle's running game has not necessarily been outstanding. So, I'm sure they'll try to get a little creative, although once conference play started, Middle's averaging a little over 30 points a game. It's those first two against Army and Troy. I'm not sure the wheels came off, but I'm not sure they had gotten on yet, and that might have been it was kind of a late start. Once we got to San Antonio in late September, things started straightening themselves out, and the Blue Raiders have won 2 out of their last 3. So they're just trying to build on some confidence. This is still a team that is not. It's not the team that Marshall has when you just look up and down the line. You're happy with every position that you've got plugged in there, number ones and probably number twos. This Marshall team it's a special group, and we don't have to be from Huntington to know that. This is it, and the Blue Raiders will have to play their best this week to take on this really good Herd ball club.
Okay, but on the flip side, we are well aware of quarterback Asher O'Hara. We know he's still going to be a threat. Is he graduated yet? Can I walk him across the stage when he's done? Because that kid is he definitely is a really great quarterback.
He is a very unique talent, and you asked me the same question 2 years ago about Brent Stockstill. So, but Asher for the folks in Huntington that haven't seen him yet, he was one of 2 quarterbacks in the country last year that threw for over 2,000 and ran for over 1,000. The other was Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma. His intent this year has been to run less, and he said, I need to grow up and trust my teammates. I think last year a lot of it was, okay, if it's going to get done, I got to do it myself. But Shaitan Mobley has come on a little bit lately, and I know he trusts his receivers more this year. Jaron Pierce, Yusuf Ali, C.J. Wyndham in particular, those 3 guys have kind of risen above the crowd a little bit. DJ England Chisholm has great speed, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him involved in the running game a little more in jet sweep type things to kind of extend the running game a little bit. But Asher's matured. He hasn't run quite as much. He's 407 yards in 7 games, which is his per game average is down, but the threat's still there, and he is. I'm telling you, he's tougher than a bucket of wet leather, and you like that about him, and he is just an absolute gem of a kid to be around.
Another guy that I wanted you to check on for me to make sure he's not there anymore is Giddy Potts, if you remember. I mean, is he? Because I wake up, I have nightmares about Giddy Potts.
There's a couple of brothers that wear green that we had the same nightmares about, but Giddy's playing overseas. Matter of fact, I had on a local sportscast today the story that involved Giddy, and that there was a young man who when his career was over, a guy named Robert Cat-Eye Taylor was the leading scorer in Middle's basketball history. He played in the late 80s, early 90s, passed away over the weekend, and he had in all of those years, in 30 years, the only 2 people that had passed him up were 2 other guys with really good nicknames, and that would be Boogie Yates and Giddy Potts. So our top 3 scorers of all time were Boogie, Giddy, and Cat-Eye. So, but Giddy is doing great. He was playing over in Southeast Asia somewhere, but Middle's got a lot of guys playing in Europe and in foreign countries right now, and that we could talk another whole hour or so about the upcoming basketball season and scheduling and all of that. But Giddy is gone. I've got a copy of his transcript here. I'll forward along to you.
Okay, I'll sleep easier now knowing that's actually happened here. What do you think makes this series what it is? I think there's a fondness and a level of we want to get after each other. You see that with Western Kentucky and Marshall. You see that definitely with Middle and Western Kentucky. And I think you see that as well with these 2 teams.
Yeah, it's kind of I wouldn't say the Bermuda Triangle, but the Huntington, Bowling Green, Murfreesboro. And I think a lot of it goes back to the 1AA days. And I think, both fan bases have a real affinity for those years because both teams were powerhouses, and Western was a little bit later, but in those days the triangle included Richmond, Kentucky with Eastern. But I think it goes back to that, and the hit Mike Caldwell put on a guy in a playoff game up there that knocked him out, unintentionally, but the Todd Donnan had great games, and then to be able to pick that up in the 1A era and play in the same conference, I think history maybe treats it well because it is very competitive. It's competitive, although again, Marshall has had the upper hand more times than not, but Middle's come in and even in some years where they weren't supposed to, played very, very well and snuck out a victory or 2 against what may have been a superior Marshall team. But again, and I think, head coaches, they project a lot about their program. both guys are class individuals. Both guys are very, very good football coaches that have great backgrounds, and both respect each other a lot. So I think that permeates, down the line, hopefully.
Do you see this anywhere close to the 100 miles of hate, or just not there yet?
Boy, as long as Middle and Western are in the same conference, it will be hard for anything, to surpass that. And geography plays a whole lot with it because, along with Marshall, and although we don't play it every year, but UAB has become that a similar type thing with Middle. But, the 100-mile rivalry, it goes back over almost 100 years that Middle and Western have been playing football. This was the 70 some odd meeting this year, but they've been playing each other about as long as either school has been playing football, and that ability that, to be there in an hour and a half if you need to, whether it's for football, basketball, baseball, soccer, or tiddlywinks, that rivalry is there. And I've used the political analogy, the red state, blue state, and it has been it's been a heated but very good. To me, it's the best rivalry in the conference, and it's certainly, in normal times when we can have, it's one of those that you open the doors, you're going to have a lot of butts in the seats, and but I don't think there's quite as much respect as there is maybe between Middle and Marshall. It's a little more emotional.
Joining us on the program, longtime voice of the Blue Raiders, Chip Walters, and the game is coming up on Saturday. Speaking of butts in the seats, of course, social distancing and restrictions continue. About 12,500, the expected amount. I heard on the conference call someone asking Stock what makes it so hard to play in Huntington, and he pointed out the fans. There might not be that many of them, but there's still going to be a factor in this one, compared to other places you probably have already been to.
Yeah, I mean, we were at Rice, and there was just I think maybe about 200 total people in there, or 400, because I think both teams had about 200 tickets for players' family members. But Army was interesting because there were the only people in the stands were the 4,200 cadets, and they made some noise. And I have no doubt because of between the thunderclaps and everything else, the folks at Marshall, they know how to make Edwards Stadium get loud. And I've already seen a couple of games on television from there, and yeah, it looks like that they're putting in all that the law will allow, literally.
Joining us on the program, we get to see him coming up on Saturday, Chip Walters, and you guys are bussing in. So, night before game day for you, how's your trip going to look?
Well, for this trip, we normally fly, but obviously, everybody's changed their travel plans just a little bit, and so the team will be bussing. They're going to leave about 10:30 Central Time. They always try to get to the hotel about 5 o'clock local time. So that's that's the plan. Me and my guys, instead of a bus, we're gonna drive it this time, and also next week we go play Troy a second time, as a matter of fact, next week. And those are both about 5-hour trips for us, a little just 5 and change. So that's not too bad. And so I think me and my guys, we're going to leave about 10 o'clock or so Friday morning, get on up there. And then that also allows us to leave the hotel a little before the team does and get over. And as you know what it's like to get the booth set up and the locker room stuff set up and all of that, so we can have it ready by the time they get there.
Just remember, this isn't your only trip to Huntington this year. You get to come back in February for a double header. Extended
stay, the 2-game series. The 2-game series. I'm interested to see what game times are going to be, because I think I saw on the conference website that they're asking at first, when they first came out with the Thursday, Saturday, same opponent schedule, there was a lot of talk about playing that Saturday game early in the afternoon so teams can go ahead and get home. And now with the Friday, Saturday format, I did see, I think, a note on there that they want 21 hours between tip-offs. So I'm all for playing that Friday game at about 5 o'clock and then going ahead and so that'll let us play at 2 o'clock on Saturday. That'd be just fine with me.
We can't wait to see you coming up on Saturday. You'll be here in Huntington. Looking forward to it. Middle Tennessee is always one of my favorite groups of people to come in Huntington.
Well, good deal. We look forward to seeing you guys. I'm going to be talking to Steve later on tonight on our coaches show, so always look forward to coming up. We'll be there. So
Chip,
we're still going to make it.
Chip,
right.
Thank you. I appreciate your time as always, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Chip Walters, he is the longtime voice of the Blue Raiders. When we continue, we're going to talk a little volleyball. There's a lawsuit going on right now trying to afford the opportunity for some student athletes to be able to participate in the tournament. We're going to get an update with that. Chris Dickerson is going to join us. You know him from the West Virginia Record, but he'll be joining us as a concerned parent when we continue with today's edition here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
You're listening to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
We're presented by Huntington Federal Savings Bank. Welcome back to The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from Chris Dickerson. He's going to get us a update on a lawsuit that's happening. Several schools, several teams in Putnam County suing, trying to figure out why different procedures are being adopted for one playoff bracket and not another. So he's going to clear it all up for us. So he's waiting for a ruling. He's going to join me here as soon as he's got that. So until then, we're going to hear just a few minutes of our conversation earlier this afternoon with Grant Wells, the reigning Offensive Player of the Week in Conference USA. And that's where I began as I got a chance to lead off questions this afternoon. Reigning Conference USA Offensive Player of the Week. That doesn't get old, does it?
Certainly not yet. But, just take it back to, every time I get, an honor like that or something, you're only successful as, the people around you. So, it seems fitting that it comes after a huge one like that. So, I take that not only as an individual award, but as a team award.
So this is going to be a special week for you. 75 game, Doc, with a lot of importance on it. This is going to be your moment to play in this game. Just what does it all mean to you?
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be my first opportunity to go out there and, represent the 75, as the starting quarterback. So, there are a lot of emotions, and, growing up, hearing the story and all about it, and then being in the program for, 2 years, hearing about the story in the program. It certainly raises, emotions this whole week. Practice seems a little bit different. Meetings seem a little bit different because we know this game isn't about us anymore. As much as we want to go, keep our undefeated season, it's not about us. All of that goes out the window when we hit this week.
And to a man, when you talk about this game, everyone says, you don't lose this game, you can't lose this game. There's that much importance. Do you feel any pressure? I mean, is it more resolve? Is it just that's what we have to do to make sure we win? I mean, what do you feel when you have that extra expectation?
Weird things happen on this week. There's someone new every year that seems to get their opportunity this week, or plays go a certain way this week. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of pressure, but that pressure comes when you're playing on a big stage and when you have so much to play for, like we do this week. This whole community looks around this and rallies around this game as a sense of pride and as a sense of just for them to feel good, knowing that this program has come such a long way from where it was back in 1970.
There any extra emotion, being someone, a little bit closer to the program, the state? Have you had spent a lot of time maybe bringing a lot of people up to speed?
You know, being it was such a long time ago, I really didn't have that much connection to it other than the fact that, growing up playing football, being around my friends, that, they taught me a lot about this, but even before I got here at Marshall. So, I had a lot of background coming into, college about this week and about what happened. So, that there's a sense of connection. This happened only an hour from my house, even if it was 50 years ago. But so yeah, there's certainly a little bit of connection there.
And I'll turn it over to everyone else in a second. Can you tell us a little bit about Middle Tennessee? What have you seen? What's the challenge for you?
Save big money in your next project.
Middle Tennessee throws a lot of unorthodox, like Will said, defense at you. Last year, I know over 90% of the plays we ran last year were some sort of blitz or some sort of odd look that we have to prepare for, and that's just the challenge this week when you look at Middle. So looking at their defenses and what all they can bring is certainly the center point of this week.
You talk about a lot of weird things happening around this game, and I'm sure you've heard stories from coaches and players and other people already. Does anything stand out to you that someone's told you that's happened surrounding this game, or some unusual story that you've heard?
One thing, just sticks out. The first is Rev, how close he was to this event with his wife being a cheerleader around that time, and just how close he was. He was here at that time, around that time. So just how close, our team chaplain was, and how important this game is to him, because, he's grown up a Marshall fan. He's a graduate of Marshall. So, having someone that close to the team and that close to everybody's hearts, so deeply affected by this, certainly hits home.
For you this year, last year it kind of felt, everyone always says that it's like the 75 is with them. And last year it certainly felt that way because 2 of Louisiana Tech starters got suspended. But you haven't experienced that yet. But have you heard about how it's always, the 75 is always there in spirit from from other players, or maybe even Doc emphasizing that?
Yeah. Like I said, and everybody says this week, weird things happen on this week, whether it's, plays going a certain way or calls going our way or whatever it is. So, you certainly get the sense in that. And, just the ceremony before, I've only got to experience it one time, but, certainly I'll get to experience it this week. But, just you can just feel a different level of energy in the stadium when we walk out and, next to coach and everybody. So, throughout this week, there's certainly a different level of energy in this building.
Grant, one thing that I've always wondered, and I've even thought about this with me growing up and being around this area too. It was very close that Marshall was going to basically cancel its football program and not bring football back. Can you imagine what it would have been like for you growing up if Marshall didn't have a football team?
Yeah. Like I said, it's amazing to see how far this program has gone, from 1970, and it's all started with that young thundering herd. And it's amazing to think, what would life be like, certainly around Huntington, if that didn't happen, and they really just gave up. And that's really been a focal point of this week, and what everybody tries to get through is just how relentless they were, and how they just moved on from whatever that tragedy happened. So certainly life would be different, and I know I'm glad that for that young thundering herd team and for them to push on.
Does that make it a little more special that you all are undefeated and nationally ranked coming into this 75 game this year?
Honestly, no. Like I said earlier, all that goes, we could be 0-8 right now or whatever we are going into this week, and all that goes out the window. like I said, this game means so much more than the 2020 season than anything else. I mean, the 50th year anniversary, especially, and just this 75 week, all that stuff goes out the window. And you realize you're going to play for so much more on Saturday.
Grant, last year as a backup watching this game on the sidelines, what do you remember about your first 75 game? It was a night game. I know you guys came back in the end. What do you just remember about your first experience?
Well, I know it was my first play. That didn't go too well, but just like I said earlier, just the emotions that goes on in the stadium. We put the black jerseys on, and it all starts on Monday, the week of. Hearing all the coaches and everybody around the program just tell you how special it is this week. So just the energy is what I remember most, and is what stands out the most this week.
Grant Wells on the game coming up on Saturday. Very important game to him and this entire Thundering Herd roster. We wrap it up when we continue with today's edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
Now, back to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Wrapping up today's edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Our phone line this hour brought to you by Miller Lite. Tomorrow on the program, we hope to hear from Chris Dickerson. We've been communicating off air. No decision yet. There's a case being heard right now involving teams in Putnam County not being able to participate in the state volleyball tournament. And so no ruling yet there. Hopefully we're going to have something at least tonight. I'll have Chris on to talk about it tomorrow. Of course, Chris, many years working in local sports, works with the West Virginia Record, but he will be joining me on the program tomorrow as more of a parent with daughters on the volleyball teams that are impacted, as more so than a reporter. So just want to qualify that. And, of course, Chris would make that qualification as well. This is something that's personal to him. So we're going to have him on the show, give his side of everything, what they're trying to do as far as access to the tournament, teams that are eligible that can't play, and why the tournament is different than what is happening for football. So all of that's coming up tomorrow. And, of course, you don't know what we're going to have. I suspect we'll have some player interviews for you as well. So tune in tomorrow. You never know what you're going to hear until you hear it right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. That was a tease. That was a generic but effective tease to remind you don't know what you're going to hear. So tune in. Good stuff today. I want to thank Chip Walters joining us on the program. Always fun to talk to him. He definitely one of our favorite people to come in to Huntington along with Middle Tennessee. I like playing Middle. I like playing Western Kentucky. I like these opponents. These are the teams that I enjoy the most seeing on the roster. When you look at the schedule, you look down those rosters, you look down those schedules, and you see Western Kentucky, you see Middle. I like seeing those guys. That's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for tuning in. Back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
WRBC Huntington, W227BS Huntington, your flagship home of the Marshall Thundering Herd and The Drive with Paul Swann, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.